U.S. President Barack Obama has spoken with the leaders of Israel and Egypt about rocket attacks being launched from the Gaza Strip into Israel and the Israeli retaliation. Obama is concerned about the escalating violence. So is the government of Egypt, which is asking the United States to intervene.
The situation came to a head yesterday. That's when Israel killed the commander of the Hamas military wing by blowing up the car he was riding in. It's a tactic Israel has used in the past, and as expected, Palestinian militants responded with intensive rocket fire. 3 Israelis were killed today when a rocket from Gaza slammed into their apartment building. Another rocket hit a Tel Aviv suburb earlier today, although no injuries were reported. In response, Israeli aircraft, tanks, and naval gunboats have pounded the Hamas-ruled coastal strip, killing 11 Palestinians and wounding more than 90.
Will this latest escalation of violence lead to an extensive ground attack in Gaza and perhaps expand elsewhere in the region? We're joined today in Toronto by Doron Horowitz, the Director of National Security for the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. Next to him, John Thompson of the Mackenzie Institute. And John, the Israelis have moved armor to the border. Is it now inevitable that they will reoccupy Gaza?
No, it's not inevitable, and it wasn't during Operation Cast Lead a couple of years either. It's the dance of control. I mean, somebody in the Gaza Strip is firing hundreds and hundreds of rockets and mortar shells into Israeli territory. The Israelis will come back, take a stick, knock out some people in Hamas, attack some of their launch sites until Hamas settles down again. This is a scene we've seen time and time again over the last decade.
Doron, let's hear your take. What do you think?
I don't think that Israel has any intention or desire to go into the Gaza Strip. I think that Israel has exercised tremendous restraint, but not only reserves the right to defend and protect its civilian, just like any other democratic society or country, but is obligated to protect its civilians so that they can have a normal life.
Doron, how significant was the killing of the head of Hamas the other day?
I think that there is tremendous significance in eliminating an individual who has a tremendous amount of blood on his hands, whose mandate is to kill innocent civilians and is driven by a radical ideology which does not promote peace or living or coexisting. Not only that, but he's also committing another crime. He's also putting his own citizens or his own brothers or people that live in the Gaza Strip in harm's way.
John, we've heard about innocent people, including children, that have been victims. Is the Israeli Iron Dome missile defense effective enough to protect its citizens from most of the attacks from Gaza?
No, Iron Dome is a defensive rocket that intercepts incoming missiles and can intercept incoming artillery rockets, maybe even mortar shells sometimes, but it's a defense. You know, it's like a trench or a wall or other defenses. I mean, none of them are perfect. They reduce the ability of an attacker to penetrate successfully, but they don't eliminate it. And when you're getting dozens or hundreds of rockets being fired, I do expect Iron Dome to catch all of them, or even most of them, is asking far too much from it.
John, are you concerned that Syria or Iran could possibly get involved in this somehow?
Syria, oh, sorry.
I think that Iran is involved. I think that you can see a very complex network of arms smuggling from Iran through East Africa, through Sinai, which certainly has an agenda to promote more chaos between Hamas and Israel. So certainly Iran is. I don't think that Syria necessarily has, it's not on the top of their list. I think they would probably want to avoid a conflict with Israel, but certainly Iran is involved.
John, do you agree?
Yeah, the Syrians have been very careful about picking a confrontation with Israel directly since they lost a big chunk of their air force in 1982. And Israel, for its part, has been careful about how it handles Syria as well. But Iran's animosity is well known. And again, some of these rockets that have been hitting Tel Aviv from the Gaza Strip are very long-range artillery rockets that are manufactured in Iran.
Okay, Doron, let's talk about Canada. As we watch what's going on in Gaza, has security been beefed up within the Jewish community here?
I think that the implications of what's happening in that region certainly may have implications here.
Can you be specific about what kind of implications?
Well, I think that we can see, as we've seen in the past, anti-Israel demonstrations and protests, rallies, etc. I think that it's important to note that the Jewish community has a very strong and healthy and good relationship with law enforcement, both on a federal and local level, as any responsible community should have. We adhere and follow their instructions. At this point, there is no indication or information that points to any increased level of threat. But we are certainly monitoring the situation closely. We are in touch with law enforcement, and we'll take the necessary measures if it warrants it. At this point, we're just being responsible, and we are monitoring.
John, a lot of people aren't quite sure what to make of what goes on in the Middle East. They read about it, they hear of the conflict. Is it important to understand the history of this region, what Israel has gone through to try to protect their nation, and what not their rivals, but their enemies, what they're prepared to do to try to eliminate that freedom for Israelis?
Well, being well informed, I think, is a requirement in all times, and this is a situation with a very long and complex history. But the long and the short of it is that Israel is a democratic society. It's operate under the rule of law. Hamas does not operate the same way. Hamas could live, or the Gaza Strip could be perfectly quiet for years at a time if they stopped shooting ordnance into Israel. I mean, Israel is only about 4.5 times the size of Metro Toronto. They don't have the space to be tolerant about other people chucking artillery into their territory.
And Doron, I'm wondering, if there's a state of emergency on the Gaza Strip on both sides, what happens to the people who live there, their homes? Do they have to leave? Businesses, do they shut down?
I think over 1 million civilians in Israel suffer tremendously from shock to disruption to normalcy of life that exceeds far beyond just a rocket hitting a house. It's a democratic society, as John just mentioned. It's governed by rule of law, and I think that there is an obligation on the part of Israel to ensure that its civilians live in peace and safety, which is a pillar of democracy, which any country, including Canada, is obligated to provide to its citizens.
Doron, will Israelis ever not retaliate?
I don't think it's about retaliation. I think that Israel is, like any other democratic society, is responsible for providing a safe and secure environment for its citizens, just like Canada or any other democratic society.
And John, should the U.S. intervene?
I don't know how they could improve matters. This is, again, it's an old dance. It's an old situation. The country that can really prevent rockets from being fired inside Israel from the Gaza Strip is Egypt. And if Egypt is being lax on its duties about securing the Gazan border, then this is what's going to happen. So if there's any pressure to be placed, it's on Cairo.
Final question to Doron. How could these events possibly impact the upcoming Israeli elections?
There's a political agenda. I'm not a political analyst, I'm a security analyst, but I would say that every person in Israel is concerned for the safety and security of its civilians. I think there's a common denominator there, and I think it's in the best interest of not just Israelis, but citizens of Canada and the States to ensure that democracies remain safe.
Doron Horowitz and John Thompson, thank you both very much for your perspective today. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.